What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Elementary Season 6, Episode 13. Breathe. Breathe. So, for this one, pretty interesting case, in all honesty. It took a lot of turns that I honestly wasn't expecting it to take, which for this season is really good. Because for the most part, like it's mostly been predictable, but it's also been very like complex. So it's always just like, oh yeah, I know exactly where this is gonna go. First we go here, then we go here, and then sometimes it's just like you take one too many steps. This one I thought was very well paced. I thought all the different steps it took were surprising in a fun way. You got this guy who's uh, he's apparently been an assassin for a long time, and just that in and of itself is like, wow, like you got to solve this guy's murder. He probably has a ton of people who might want him out of the picture so that way he doesn't talk, and the fact that somebody managed to kill him in the first place is insane. And then you find out this one guy. I honestly wasn't sure what the story with this one guy was going to be. His name was Medina. He was like this guy. He was in charge of this company basically that they managed to take like cystic fibrosis medicine and sell it for like they cornered the market and they sold it for a huge profit. Not at all similar to the way that certain doctors now are touting a certain drug that's going to treat a certain virus, while rejecting another one that's readily available to the public. Not at all similar to that at all, because then if we question him, well, then all of our videos would get taken off of YouTube, right? But anyways, so this guy though, he basically had another guy killed who was about to release his research and make a drug that's readily available, so that way he could corner the market and he could sell it for such a huge profit. And so when they brought this guy in, I'm thinking, first of all, wow, true life, right? But also, like, where's this gonna go? Like, what's his story gonna be? How's it gonna tie in? Because they already kind of decided, okay, he's not responsible for it. But then all of a sudden he started becoming more of a focus, and they're like, well, let's try to get him for whatever murder he contracted from this hitman who ended up dying. And so I'm thinking, okay, so maybe they're just going to solve this real quick. They're going to find a way to take him down while also solving this hitman's murder in the process. Like, is that what's going to happen? And then slowly you come to realize, oh wait, no, this hitman killed himself to frame him. Interesting. And then you find out apparently he tried to contract this hitman, but then the hitman had a personal connection with his son, who was the son of his assistant. So they had a son together. Long story short, this son had cystic fibrosis, and then this guy upcharged it so much, and it became personal for him. So he decided to frame him for his own murder, just so he could do one good thing. And I like the fact that that's sort of the idea that was pushed without really confirming whether or not he actually felt this way. Is that he did have a chance to look back on himself and say, if I can do one good thing with my life, let it be this. So I really like how they handled it, though. It was an emotional story near the end, and I like the fact that they did manage to get their guy in the end, because the guy was kind of a douche. So yeah, but I liked all that. The story with Joan and the baby, or adopting a kid, still not really grasping me. Still kind of like, I don't really feel it. I don't feel like it fits a story that Sherlock should be handling. It just doesn't sound right. When I think about Sherlock and Watson, and then I think Watson's having a kid. First of all, I'm picturing the guy Watson, so it's a little bit different, because it's not about, is Watson going to be a good father. It's about, is Watson going to be a good mother, and it's adopting a baby. It's not she's having a kid with her husband. So I don't know. There's a lot of weird things that just don't sound right in the Sherlock lore. But I'm trying to set my mind at, okay, so it's a different show. Obviously it's set up to be different, but at the same time these characters are still supposed to resemble the characters they're based on. And I still just don't feel like this is a story that Sherlock would be okay with. This is not something that he would want to do. And it still sounds like he's just okay with it. And not only that, but it sounds like he understands kind of what's socially acceptable in this scenario. Whereas I feel like the real Sherlock would hear Watson's having a kid and would just think, I mean, you're my friend. I appreciate you. Kind of like what he did with Belle, where he wanted what was best for Belle. I'm sure he would try to want what was best for Watson, but I just don't know if he could reconcile that. Like, it's a huge change to have a kid, especially for Sherlock to have a kid. I'm honestly kind of a little concerned that Watson is okay with bringing a kid around Sherlock to begin with, because it's Sherlock. So I don't know, this whole story just seems very weird. I will say though, near the end, it felt more like what Sherlock would do, because they do have a conversation earlier on how, this one guy who we've not seen at all before, but all of a sudden just pops up because apparently Joan's having some struggle with the agency that she's trying to adopt from, and they're rejecting my application. She finds out the agent that's representing her has apparently just been screwing up her stuff, and doesn't want to he's a total smarmy douchebag, so he's not wanting to take any responsibility for what happened, and so I'm just kind of like, okay, so where's this going? Why is this guy being a douchebag? And ultimately, she does bring it to Sherlock's attention because he figures it out. And she basically says it's because she didn't want him to be involved. She wasn't sure if she wanted to put that pressure on him. So I kind of understand that. But she also tells him, don't get involved. And he says he understands that. However, he does still. And I'm like, that's something Sherlock would do. If just going from the idea of this is still Sherlock Holmes, sociopath, this is something he would do for somebody that he actually is friends with, that he cares about in his own way. He would stick his neck out. He would just do it in a way that's a little bit, out there. Like contacting the king of this other, used to be nation, used to be Bohemian nation, because his son has apparently been working with the agent to illegally get these adults adopted into the family to make money. It's this weird thing, and the fact that this agent was doing it to begin with is actually not surprising somehow. But yeah, and of course Joan uses that opportunity to get what she needs out of this guy before he inevitably steps down, because even though it seems a little bit weird way of doing it, this is a very Sherlock way of doing it. It's a very Sherlock way of handling this situation. And even their conversation at the end, he's sitting there talking about how he's willing to be there to help out because he couldn't imagine not being a part of it. And that makes it makes its own sense to me, because she is his partner. She is somebody that he couldn't imagine not being around. So it's not necessarily that he feels like, oh, it's socially acceptable for me to help out with this baby and to be a part of this, or it's socially acceptable for me to move out. He's trying to come to terms with the fact that she's about to have a kid. It's what she wants to do, and he wants to let her have that, but also he still needs her a part of his life because that's what he needs. He knows that's what he needs. So I don't know, the conversation sounded much more natural for someone like Sherlock, rather compared to the conversation he had with the girl that was looking to possibly give up her baby. That one just still seemed way too unnatural for him. So, but overall, this was a good episode. It was very interesting twists and turns in the case, and then the baby story even got a little bit better. I'm really hoping though that they gotta bring Michael back soon, right? Don't get me wrong. The side stories have been okay. Stuff with Sherlock's dad was okay. The stuff with Belle and the Marshal Service was okay. The baby story is but getting better. But I want to get back to what's going on with this dude. Why? Why is he the way he is? Why did he decide to, of all people, turn to Sherlock during this time? I don't know. I want to know more about that. I want to get back to that story. So, but anyways, that's it for this episode. So now on to the next one. Please be about Michael. See you there. Now episode 14, Through the Fog. Not necessarily a bad episode. The case in this one was definitely, it was interesting. I liked it. A little predictable in certain spots. Personally, I instantly I instantly suspected the Wong guy, the one that was sitting next to the bag when the gas went off. And even when he was sitting there sick, even before we knew it wasn't a real biological weapon, I'm still sitting there thinking he could just be faking, because Gregson was talking about how the guy would want to get out of there. So I could see him faking being attacked by it so he could get taken to the hospital. But ultimately, I was right in that he was faking it. I was wrong in why he was faking it. And then also the guy with the crutches, whenever he started acting sick too. And then we found out later it wasn't real. I'm like, okay, so he's in on it too. And then of course the cop. I honestly didn't think the cop had anything to do with it, so I was surprised to find out when he did. Like it just seemed like such a shot in the dark. Like, oh yeah, this one cop, he's got anger issues, probably him. But then ultimately it was him, just not for the reasons I was thinking. So, but yeah, it was pretty interesting. Outside of that, Joan dealing with her mother having Alzheimer's, sad story. Didn't really. I mean, it's not really adding much as far as the story as a whole. I mean, it gives something. Joan is having a pretty rough season, losing her real dad, and now her mom has Alzheimer's. Like, yeah, it's been a rough season for her. I will admit I was a little confused at first because she answered the phone. She's like, "Yeah, Dad, what's up?" And I'm like, "Dad, didn't he die?" And then later on, Sherlock talked about her stepfather coming to pick her mom up. I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's been so long since I watched this show. I totally forgot that she considered her stepfather her real dad." But yeah, it's an interesting story. It's sad for her, but I don't think it's really going to add much aside from just something for Joan to deal with. It's not really going to add much to the story of like Moriarty versus Sherlock's father or Michael and whatever his character's doing. Um, might add something to the story about her adopting the baby, possibly. I don't know. But just a very short, simple episode. Nothing much to it. Decent case. I will admit, hearing the words quarantine made me wince a little bit. But yeah, that's about it for this one. So move on quickly to the next episode. See you there. And finally, episode 15, How to Get Ahead. Yeah, pretty standard episode. The case itself, that was good enough. Very, very interesting setup. The kid with his head chopped off, with a chicken with his head chopped off. It looks like something occult, but ultimately that turns out to be a ruse. Because it turns out there's a crooked politician who was seeing some pictures that this kid had, so he tries to make it look like this rum company wanted him dead, and blah, 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 blah. I kind of liked how they handled this one, compared to some of the other episodes where it feels like they don't really have much to go on, so they go here, and then 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 finally they end up where it's supposed to be. This one felt much more, I guess, focused, because the politician was trying to frame this rum company. Or not even this, it wasn't even a rum company, he was just trying to make it an occult act, so it wasn't even focused on him. And then ultimately, one thing led to another, which ultimately got them back to, oh, these pictures that he had, this is what killed him, but not for the reason we thought. It turns out there's something else to do with them. I don't know, it was much more streamlined than some of these other cases where it feels like they just throw in some random plot point that could have been taken out that takes up another 5 minutes, and then finally we get back to the real reason why the person was killed. So in that case, it was good. As far as the story with trying to find this new cop, I mean it was pretty funny. Honestly, it wasn't anything hard hitting. I do think Sherlock's line at the end about I'm gonna miss you to Marcus. I don't know. Again, I've talked about this before. I feel like Sherlock is not somebody that would even really understand like missing someone. Like, I don't know. I guess he would know what it feels like to miss people because he does have emotions that's shown clearly. It's just a matter of can he understand those emotions and what they mean. And clearly here he seems like he understands the emotions of losing a friend, to something better. Because when he first offered him the job, it seems like, yeah, that's something Sherlock would do. He sees something for a friend that would be beneficial for them, even if it means that, it's something he'll be hurt by. I think that's something he would do because he would consider what they would want over any emotion that he would feel about them leaving. Like, I don't know if he would truly understand the concept of, like, oh, why are you sad that he's going to a bigger job? Like, I don't know. It's, again, I feel like I might just have a different concept of who Sherlock is compared to what this show wants him to be. Like, the show wants him to have moments where he doesn't understand so he can have funny moments. But then all of a sudden they'll have moments like this where he just looks at him and is like, Gonna miss you. It's like that's a very normal thing to say. That's not Sherlock. So I don't know, but as far as like the rest of the episode, it did feel very Sherlock. He brings this cop to Captain Gregson and says, "Look, we have somebody in mind. Watson thinks she's good too." And Gregson digs into her past a little bit, and finds out that she's gotten creative with some of her cases. And that's not necessarily saying she's a dirty cop or she's forging evidence, but she will just barely tiptoe to the line and maybe a little bit over, but not like doing anything illegal. But like he says, you and Joan, you'll go to these houses and you'll say after the fact, after you broke in, you'll say that you heard someone yelling from inside, even though there's definitely nobody in there. So it's that kind of creative. And I agree with Gregson. Sherlock and Joan do not need an enabler. They don't need somebody that's going to be like, yeah, let's go do that. Marcus is not somebody that's going to go do that with them. Like, obviously, they get away with it anyway. But Marcus is a straight line cop. If they're with him, he's not just going to be like, yeah, you guys go ahead and break in. They'll do it, but he's not going to come along for the ride because that's not him. But this girl that they were trying to offer to Gregson clearly was. And so he says no. But the thing is, that's something Sherlock would do. He would look at it and say, oh, this is somebody that could help me. I'm going to offer this girl to Gregson. She's the perfect type of cop. She's a girl that looks good on paper, but also she'll help me too. Like that is a Sherlock thing. So to have him have that moment at the end where he just, I'm going to miss you, it doesn't feel right. It feels like they want him to have emotion when they need him to have emotion, they being the screenwriters, and then they suddenly don't want him to have that kind of process of social interaction. They need to make up their minds. If you want to make a Sherlock Holmes that is a bit more socially adept, if you want to give him the ability to sort of understand social cues a bit more, or at least he's learning as the series goes on and on and on, that's fine. Let him learn about that. I mean, show that it's a detriment to learn that social interaction, because one of the things that makes Sherlock Holmes a really great detective is that he doesn't have that ability to make the social interactions, the social exchanges, and so he can push all that emotion aside, keep the emotion out of it, and be able to just look at it from a logical point of view and say, all right, well, here's what the facts say, leaving all emotion aside. But this series, this show, seems to want to give him that emotion while still saying, oh, but guys, he's emotionally challenged. See, he thinks he's just going to get away with this girl who can work with him, while also having moments like this. So, I don't know. It's a problem that they need to. Obviously, next to last season, they should have figured this out a long time ago, but they clearly haven't. Like, it still feels like those moments are popping up a little too much, where he seems not like Sherlock. He seems just like a normal detective, just an everyday detective, and I don't think that's what this show intended for him to be, at least for the most part, as far as I can tell. So they just need to pick one. Like, either you make him more socially adept and you make him more like a human being, or you stick to who Sherlock Holmes is as a character, but you can't have it both ways, because then it doesn't make sense, and his actions don't make as much sense. Anyway, so that's it for these 3 episodes. 6 more left. Oh, it's like 10 o'clock. I'm thinking to myself, I got 3 more episodes in me, right? Right? But yeah, I'm getting close to the end of the season. Excited to see when Michael's finally going to come back. I'm just patiently waiting for him to just pop up in an episode again, or at least a letter from him saying, hey, Sherlock, I'm coming back into town. I need my fix again. Something, anything. But anyways, that's it for me. So let me know what you guys think of these 3 episodes down in the comment section below. Leave a like and subscribe for future Elementary reviews, and I'll see you guys at the next episode. Peace out.